or workshop. Of course. And so our first workshop tonight is an update from me. I don't know who wants to take the lead on this, whether it's Dave or Lori or. Sure. Did you guys have a presentation? Okay, all right, welcome and thank you.
Oh, David,
Mike.
well, you can go after them.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
sure. Thank you. I'm Lori Barton. I'm the executive. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just push the middle button. Push the middle button. There you go. You won't have to.
Thanks for having us. I'm Lori Barton. I'm going to look at you. I'm the executive director at LEAP, and I have Mike Schreiber, who's a board member at LEAP, and Ashley Conforn, who is our board chair. And we're just pleased to come and sort of just share with you our hopes and dreams for LEAP's future in Lyons. And Mike will start.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks again for your time. I think the best place to start is we thought it'd be great if, with the newest board of trustees, that we maybe give you a little bit of background, the journey that got us here today. So we've been really working on this for probably a year and a half now. And I think in this slide here I know it's a lot of information, but I think what's important to note, just kind of recapping, is that the needs within the community have continued to outpace the physical space that we have today. In addition to that, the church has really asked us not to leave, but we have a lease agreement that expires in December of 2022. So we've been looking for a new space for a while now. And back in February, March of 2022, there was an RFP to get the railroad depot. And so back at that time, we presented to the previous board of trustees and we were awarded the depot. Then, interestingly enough, as we were looking to kind of make plans to move into the depot, sometime in May of 2022, the sheriff's office said, hey, we didn't know that the depot was an option, and we would like to swap with LEAF for the space that we have today, basically the brown shed. And I think during that time, LEAF was really under the understanding that that would not be an issue to swap. And there was really nothing formally in writing as far as a lease agreement or a letter of understanding that said, hey, LEAF, you were awarded the depot, but now we're going to take over the brown shed. And really at that time in May of 2022, there was really no discussions about potentially what the terms of that lease agreement would be, or what the terms or requests of the town would be on LEAF, especially from a financial perspective. So really, once we got that kind of, hey, we're moving down the road of the shed in August of 2022, I know a lot of the town and the board of trustee members at the time, they actually came to an annual volunteer appreciation event that we had. And at that time, we were kind of talking about, moving into the shed, giving some ideas of the concept of what that would look like. We continue to really push to get some sort of terms or an understanding of what that lease would look like, because we really had a sense of urgency because we needed a new space. We needed to move out of the church. And it wasn't until really February of 2023 that we finally got some sort of lease agreement with some terms that I know you're going to be discussing later on this evening. I think what's really important also is during this entire process, we really were in contact with the staff to make sure that every step that we took, the staff in the town were fully aware of what our plans were and what direction we were going, especially as it came to communicating on the fundraising component. And when we first put our initial budget together, based on moving into the shed, the budget that we got is about $1.3 million total. And I think what's important for the board of trustees to understand is of that $1.3 million, about 20% of that, almost $215,000, is attributable to improvements of the building, of the structure itself. So LEAF is in fact making a pretty significant investment into the building itself. And I think LEAF greatly appreciates the opportunity to move into that space with zero kind of building purchase price, right? There's no cost to buy this piece of property. But we feel that we've been a good steward by investing $200,000 on those improvements that are necessary. Yeah, and there's structural improvements and whatnot. And I think we were never told along the lines of, as you know, this entire year process working on moving into the shed, that some terms of that lease agreement would require Leaf to make some additional investments, about $30,000 to $35,000 of additional investments for some equipment that's needed to really facilitate moving the maintenance department out of the shed. And again, that's an additional significant burden from a financial perspective on Leaf. When you consider we've raised so far through Laura's tremendous efforts about $975,000 in grant money and funding that have come through two methods of funding. One was the Worthy Cause, and another one was CDS. So, you know, we still have a heavy lift to raise an additional $300,000 to overall do the work and the projections that Laura's going to touch upon here that we need to do. But I think it's important to just kind of give you an overall background. It's been a year that we've been involved in this process. There's been some surprises in the latest round of lease, or the lease agreement that we finally had received. And we feel like we're doing our best to come up with agreeable lease terms that are financially responsible in the best interest of Leaf. And then also trying to do our best to accommodate and understand the town giving us, you know, a building at a zero cost, but we still are making a significant investment in getting the building to a level that is going to, you know, exemplify what is Leaf's new home. So that's really it from kind of the journey that we are here. I think the next thing we were going to touch upon was really Lori giving a little bit of the vision of the space. You know, what are we, you know, what's the $1.3 million buy-in? So, yeah.
So this is just a fun montage collage of what that brown shed will look like when we're done with this, assuming we're able to go forward with this project. And I'll show you the individual images as we go. This is what will become the south entrance to the brown shed. That separate entrance there would be where mental wellness and addiction recovery work happens, and also where we'll make a space for a medical care provider to come in and work and partner with us. So it's required for those kind of services to have separate entrance, and that's why that one will be down there. And then here's sort of a bird's eye view, or I guess in these days it's a goose eye view, flying over what it will look like when we're up and running. And you can see that we've got those community gardens planned, and we already have lots of people in the community, especially aging adults, are really excited to come garden at a place that they don't have to get down on their hands and knees. We keep hearing that from lots of people. So that'll be a fun project for them. And then just a fun way that we'll be able to teach food sovereignty by some of that produce that we'll use in the kitchen. And then you could, well, yeah, and then here you go. We're gonna have a beautiful patio area, seating area, a place where people can just come and gather. They can have meetings, or they can just come and be, and they can enjoy it. And we just anticipate, you know, a real spirit of community and a place where everyone is welcome. And, you know, I love thinking that we'll get to a place where there's really no stigma whatsoever. Somebody could be at Leap and we walk by and have no idea, oh, are they there because they're a participant? Or do they work there? Are they a volunteer? Are they just having a cup of coffee? We don't know, because we're all the same. And so I think that's just a real destigmatizing gift and a way to continue to knock down those barriers against seeking services. Because in the groups that I meet with, I tell them almost no doubt, whatever road you live on, your neighbors are coming to Leap for services. They just are. Next, please. Just a little factoids here. Did you know that Leaf provided comprehensive human services alliance to 22.6% of the population last year? We see most participants many times over the course of the year. In fact, I think we have about 5 households who came to our food pantry 50 weeks last year. And guess how many weeks we were open? 50 weeks. And then we had another very large group of people who came 40 weeks. And then the average number of food pantry visits each year is 16 weeks. So that's not nothing. I think that tells us that, people are going through seasons of struggle. And I like to say that we will always have some people who will always be at LEAP, and aren't we so glad that LEAP is here to help them remain independent on their feet and live in their best life. But, there's always this bigger population, and I say they jump on a merry-go-round with us, and they go around a couple times. Maybe they get some mental health care, they come to the food pantry, they get some basic needs support or referrals out for deeper support. And they ride around with us for a little bit, and things get stable and things get good, and then they jump off the merry-go-round and go on back to their life. And that's really what our goal is to help people get to independence and self-sufficiency. And I think especially since we started adding mental wellness and addiction recovery services, that is becoming more and more possible, because people who are coming in, the front door for primarily food pantry or for direct financial assistance or resource connections. A lot of those people are crossing over and beginning to get the mental health treatment. That really is a thing that is driving some of the needs for the other basic human services.
Laura, you want to touch upon what value, how much monetary value you believe the town LEAP is providing to town residents?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. We know, I haven't added it up lately. If we were an organization paying real rent and paying more than staff, at this point, I'm the only full-time staff member. Our mental wellness program director works 0.75-hour schedule, and then we have 25 to 30 hours of admin support. On top of that, we have 259 volunteers who volunteer regularly. That's not just like they came in one time in the year, but they're regularly volunteering to make them happen. And also we had 314 donors and funders. And so, we are a situation where it really does take a village. Based on what I've seen in other organizations, I'm very confident that we are providing between $1.5 and $2 million of services in this community at no cost to the community. I think I mentioned that we see most participants many times over the course of the year. Some of them, even the ones that jump off that merry-go-round, they come back. And that's okay. And again, aren't we glad that they feel that they're welcome back and that it's a safe place to come, and that things don't have to get so bad that they're truly in dire straits before they reach out to me and just reconnect with us. Okay, next. Now we're just giving you another schematic. Yeah, this is okay. This is our vision of what that round shed is going to look like inside. And this is the food pantry. You can see the sort of rounded thing with a chair behind it. That's the main entry, so people can check in. We'll have a receptionist kind of person there doing intake when people come in, and behind that we'll have a kitchen. It's not exactly a commercial kitchen, but it'll be a nice kitchen. And so remember when I referenced those food gardens and teaching food sovereignty, that's a place where people who know how to do those things can bring our people in, and they can learn to prepare their own food, and as they're learning to grow their own food and learn more about nutrition. And so I think that's just a really fabulous thing that's going to come to the community. There's nothing like it here now. And then you can see back behind those little shadow people.
Okay, Debbie.
That's an inside joke. Behind those shadow people, we have a really cool a way to set up a produce stand like it's in a grocery, and they can just shop around and get the produce they want. And then we'll have the shelves with similarly food displayed in a way that's really attractive, and there's no shame. We always say no shame, just come. But I think when people get into this place, they'll be like, wow, really no shame. We want to come. And then back in where you can't see is where all the excess food storage, shelf-stable food storage, and then we'll have considerably more cold and frozen food storage back in there.
Can I?
Yes, I think you should. Okay, I see now. And so we wanted to just show you that this is sort of overhead schematic of what the space looks like on the lower right quadrant. We will still have a garage door opener. It'll be scooted down a little bit. It'll be smaller. And we're looking at kind of an epoxy floor that anything can happen in there. Art classes can happen, muddy feet can happen. It won't really matter. We can just hose it down. And it just makes it a very accessible place for anybody who needs to be in there. So that, obviously the wide open space is the pantry. Right behind that is the kitchen. Up in the upper right is where we'll be storing the food. And then if you go to the second floor, along the top, we've got a place, we have several clients who have no ability to wash themselves or any clothes whatsoever. And so they do come and try to clean up in the sink at the church. And so we're not looking to have showers for everybody, but there are certain people who we know who are very connected at Leaf, and we're very aware of what their situations are. So they'll be able to get clean when they come to Leaf. And then we'll have ADA required bathrooms. They're along the back wall. And then if you go to the up and down far left, that's that separate entrance that I told you about to get into mental wellness and addiction recovery. You come in right there, and at the very low corner, that's a small waiting room. And directly across from that, that would be the main treatment room where Cherie will work. Kind of catty corner to that. They say that's where I'll work, unless I'm out in my car or something, but isn't that where I'm gonna be? Supposedly? Yeah. Okay, a place to work. I'll be in the garden. Yeah, I do. Then the kind of long thin place is just a flex space where people can work. Like we'll have printers and just we'll roll up chairs and people can work and do projects or even collaborate together as they need to. Also back along one of those walls is a flex office space, and that would be where MAT providers, MAT means medically assisted treatment. And so those will be providers who come alongside and they can actually provide medical care for people who are experiencing SUD, that's substance use disorder, or OUD, that's opioid use disorder concerns. And so if we have a match partner in there, along with our LAC, licensed addictions counselor, which we do have, and we'll be training another one starting hopefully next month, then we can provide comprehensive behavioral and substance abuse services, and they are needed. In addition to that flex space, we're actually meeting with a doctor who's an internist next week, and he's been providing these kinds of services in Netherlands, but his clinic is moving to Arvada. And so he's looking for a place to come in once a week, doctor services in town. And he's very interested in partnering with Leaf. But again, we need a space for him to do that. And so that's part of the design there. And then the thing that looks like an amoeba or something, that would be a conference room or a group meeting room or a treatment room. Yeah, oh, we should, yeah. Mental health group classroom there.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Do we have to get through David's? And the next 25 minutes?
Yeah, so
Okay, great. Also just up in the northwest corner is a closet to continue to store the potable water that's already outside.
Water station.
Okay.
The images of the space. Can you go back one? Just one more. So again, my last comment here is I think it's really important to understand that Leaf is making this significant investment, $1.2, $1.3 million. And I believe that this new facility is really going to be a showcase within the town alliance. And I think, again, we appreciate the Board of Trustees working on a lease agreement that financially makes sense for Leaf. But I think overall, with the investment that we're making, I think you see this facility will be, adding to the beauty of the town. And there's much need in the town for this increased facility, right? We need to expand the services. Otherwise, Leaf potentially could be turning people away. Because we can't remain in the church for indefinitely. And we have no other real options at this point. So I think it's just important to understand that we're putting a lot of money into this project, and I think the town will be very proud of the results.
Yeah, and then one more quick thing, all of those shelves you see, they're designed to roll all the way back to the back. And then there will be a one of those big partition walls. And so the space actually can become a very large community space for whatever needs the community might have to gather together. Okay, next. Yeah, good driver.
Yeah, we might wanna like skip ahead to.
Oh, yeah, I'll just say go with let me see. Oh, I do want to just tell you all quickly, I think you have those, but I wanted to just to let you know what we've accomplished in this community last year. And we raised every single dollar on our own to do it. And we're raising every single dollar on our own to do this capital project. Last year, we saw 267 unduplicated people in the pantry. Most of them we saw many, many times. That's a 10% increase over 2021. In fact, last week, we had the most people attend the food pantry in the history of the food pantry. So COVID was not a high point in need. The high point is coming, and now with SNAP benefits ending on March 1st, we are just holding onto our boots to see what's going to happen in the coming weeks. Meals on Wheels continues to deliver hot meals and warm clothes to people who can't shop for or prepare a nutritious meal every day. So Pam Browning's team delivered almost 2,500 meals to 17 unique clients last year. Basic needs and resource matching, that's when people come with an unexpected financial crisis. And LEAF can support that crisis typically once a year. We apply best practices, provide case management when that is needed. And again, our goal is to help people get to stability, not to get to a place where they can come to LEAF every month for help, because that's not very stable. Last year we had many more requests than this, but the ERAC program was incredibly helpful in getting rents and mortgages paid. So that maybe would have come close to triple last year, short of those funds that were made available. And that program has ended. Mental wellness and addiction recovery. One person not working full-time served 82 individuals last year. She provided 306 individual therapy sessions. You can see the increases, 28 group therapy sessions, 128 hours of crisis intervention, and that is pretty much 0% her job. But if she doesn't do it, no one will. 380 hours of community work and million therapy, which is a 50% increase over 2021. And 380 case management hours, which is a 250% increase over 2021. Our tagline for this program is that we want to serve people who are unable to access or afford care elsewhere. And that pretty much aligns with the people who are already LEAF's clients. It's really hard to navigate the services at mental health partners. It's really hard to get yourself physically to mental health partners. It's really hard to establish clinical relationships because of their turnover issues. There are just a lot of things that keep people who come to LEAF from being able to successfully access services in bigger systems. Because of all of this, we were able to get grant funding. And when I talk about the 2 new clinicians who are coming in, that's because we did receive grant funding, and we will be specifically adding substance abuse, opioid abuse disorder, and for the first time ever in Lions, as far as we can tell, services for youth. And in the next 5 days, we'll be interviewing 5 local candidates. And that's a little bit of a unicorn, because every other organization we speak to is saying it's completely impossible to find candidates. You cannot find qualified candidates. And we had pretty tight parameters because, we're not confident somebody from Loveland really would get Lions, let alone want to be here. And so we really needed to vet them and help them understand this is a mountain community. The culture is very different. Earning trust is very different. Running into your clients on every corner is very different. And like I said, I'm happy to say that 4 out of 5 of our candidates live right here and are qualified. I feel confident that we'll be bringing them on in the next couple weeks. And Lions Volunteers is still alive and well, looking for a champion to help organize them and deploy them out into the community. And then we posse like there's no tomorrow, also along. Okay. I just wanted to touch on the problems that we're solving and advancing equity, the ways that we are doing that successfully here in Lions. You may or may not know that the lack of equity in access to services is a critical problem in the mountain communities and the rural communities in Colorado. And the county in particular is starting to look at what Leaf's doing and getting impressed and wanting to use some of the practices that we've come up with and wanting to kind of pollinate them into other organizations and other communities. And I think that's a high form of praise. I think I already mentioned 1/3 of our pantry guests are English language learners. We're experiencing crossover from core programs and especially into mental wellness. The vast majority of our clients are extremely low or low income in Boulder County. Our clients access more than one service and many times each year. And also we need to be prepared for shifting housing needs as the Summit neighborhood opens. You know, probably some of those people will come to Leaf, but the homes that they leave behind, there's a good chance that all of those people will come to Leaf. So one way or the other, we're going to be experiencing an influx in clients and guests who come to see us, and we're already, you know, busting out of our seams. And I also told you that we're already meeting with an interested physician if we can just find a place for him to work with us. So basically, Leaf provides well over $1.5 million in services in Lyons each year at no cost to our clients or to this town.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure that we have enough time for Planner Kimmett's
Do you have more?
piece of this
Oh, I think
discussion.
it's like
So-
right on the last major one.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I think the thing that we, on the Leaf's leadership team really wanted to convey to you is that in order to continue providing services and to finance this capital project, we have to go out and raise 100% of these funds. We don't get the money anywhere else. I write letters, I have meetings, I write reports, I beg, I make applications. We don't have any other way to get the money unless we can successfully find it. We're very small. I told you how small our staff is. We don't have funds beyond what is already designated to deliver our programs and what is designated by our capital grant funders to undertake our capital project. And then I want you, to tell you these things that I'm sure you're already aware of. This community is struggling. This community is in a very low place. Giving is down. The Main Street fire really cannibalized our year-end giving. We didn't end as strongly as we should have because in the last 2 weeks of the year, people gave $92,000 to the Main Street fire. And as we serve more people, our small donor pool is shrinking even more. So nobody in North Boulder is interested in supporting Lyons and Leaf. And we have a really small area of people who are even interested in donating to Leaf. And I went and looked at the depot application that we made, and I had given some estimates of what I thought our service levels would be in 2022. They were higher. So we served even more people than we thought we would serve last year, and I fully expect that is going to continue. And so again, our donor pool is shrinking. Our people are tired, but the needs just keep coming, and every time a chunk of funds is asked for some other reason, it means that we're not able to deliver programs and we weren't able to do this project.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight and for the information. Really appreciate it. Like you said, we're not going to discuss the terms of the lease right now. And I know Planner Kimmett has some nuts and bolts to discuss. So I'd like, if it's okay, I'd like to have you do that, Planner Kimmett. And hopefully we'll have some time for questions, discussion, since this is a workshop, but I also know that we have another workshop at 30 minutes. We'll try to compress time again. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Roden and trustees. Let me share my screen really quick. As part of a very brief overview of the documents you already received in your packet. Let's see. There we go. A key component of what we need to understand in the nuts and bolts of this, which is the most exciting part, is where this is in the sense of the lots that this will occupy, because a part of the future process will be a minor subdivision. Leaf feels that this can wait until later date in the development process that lies ahead, and I feel that's also acceptable. I don't feel we need to go through the subdivision phase now. That said, it's an important part of the lease, which we'll be signing. So if you take a look at this georeference plat map, you can see that the town hall parcel, quote unquote, town hall parcel, are lots 4 through 8 of block 32 of the town of Lyons, amended 1929 plat. And the brown building is this. This is the current kind of like parking turnaround area for what's been utilized by the Public Works Department. And there's some space here, and also a little bit of the parking on the west side. In my staff report, I had mentioned a portion of lot 6 might need to be a part of the lease, but I think that's been changed, and now it will just be lots 4 and 5, and we'll share this parking here on the west side of the building. So lots 4 and 5 are what are under consideration for land use and improvements to the existing brown building. So it's a 3-part process, and to understand what lies ahead, first we go back to the relatively recently approved conditional use permit, that our conditional use review process that even allows for a nonprofit to locate within the municipal zone district, because this parcel is zoned M municipal. That was approved, I believe, under ordinance 1130. And that grants Leaf the right to a conditional use review. There is no shortcut to that. The conditional use review process involves staff review, PCDC review and recommendation, and then finally Board of Trustees review. The second part of the process, which can happen concurrent to the first part, is the major development review process. The major development review process ordinarily is, again, staff level review, PCDC review and recommendation, followed by Board of Trustees public hearing and potential approval. There is a portion of the code, I believe it's Lyons Municipal Code section 161720 F2B1A, that allows for the Board of Trustees at its discretion to change or to allow for a major development review to be considered a minor development review. Staff feels comfortable with that. If the board feels comfortable with doing such, the advantage of that to Leaf would be a staff level only review process for the development review as it. So major development review, staff, PCDC, Board of Trustees, minor development review, just staff. Again, conditional use review is a staff, PCDC, Board of Trustees, no matter what. And that's kind of a nutshell of what we're looking to need to do in order to approve Leaf's use of the Brown building. Happy to entertain any questions, one of which might be time. How long will this take? 3 to 4 months, I'd say, to go through everything properly.
And that's just the staff review, or that's the?
No, that would include the conditional use review.
That's
Yeah. That does not include the subdivision process, since that is something that we can do at a later date. But for the conditional use review and either major or minor development review, depending on what the board decides, 3 to 4 months would be comfortable. It's possible it could go quicker, but there's not really a promise to that.
So, I'm gonna try without thinking speak. It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere in our past, the the Board of Trustees had the authority to perhaps give, I don't know if it was conditional, so this is maybe where I'm getting messed up, but to say that we would let the PCDC do the review and we would just accept without having to go through another review process with Board of Trustees. Basically, and this is one of the things that I still have a problem bureaucracy wise, is that it's redundant work. So is that at all an option? Did we not do that at some point with Summit Housing? Or the board decided, well, we will just do it and not have PCDC. Do you remember something like that?
That's trustee Farrell, that's for the development review process. And so we are recommending employing that process where, we waive both PCDC and BOT review and be a staff review only. But there is no such analog, if you will, for the subdivision or for the conditional use processes.
Would say, Mayor Pro Tem, that I understand where the confusion comes from. A conditional use, I guess I should phrase this, the difference between a conditional use and a development review. Because if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying it seems redundant. No?
What
Okay.
I feel the redundancy is that it goes through the PCDC review process.
Okay.
And then it comes to us also. Basically, you're just regurgitating everything that the PCDC, that you presented to the PCDC, their recommendations, and then we go through it again. I'm trying to save us a couple of weeks, is my point.
Okay.
And so I was just wondering if there is any ability to do a conditional use review with just PCDC or just the Board of Trustees, or does it really have to go through both commission and board?
You have to change the code as it exists today.
Okay.
And I think one of the differences is, the Board of Trustees is elected and the PCDC is appointed. So I think you want elected officials to check the work and make the decisions for the town. Otherwise, you'd be having appointed folks making decisions for it. Does that make sense?
Yes, so I was going to recommend we not have PCDC go through it.
But if we take it down to a minor development review, then it's neither, it's just staff.
So then I need that clarification. I guess I thought that conditional use review, even staff being a minor development, it still has to go through PCDC and for the conditional use.
That is correct. Yeah.
To support that.
No.
We could publish them at the same time, so there's only, it could go to planning commission Monday and then to the board the next Monday. I mean, we can do it really efficiently if we post them simultaneously.
And that's, I guess that's where the nuance between what is a conditional use review and what is a major development review is important to understand. A conditional use review is just that, the use of the land. Is this a use of the land that we would like to have? Is it something that is beneficial to the town of Lyons? There's a higher level of scrutiny and discretion that needs to be employed by the PCDC and the Board of Trustees under any conditional use scenario, which is why I think it does have to go through that, and there's not a shortcut, because conditional uses are something that needs to elevate, or the ask of the conditional use needs to elevate land use in Lyons. It shouldn't be ordinarily accepted as by right. It's a special review, whereas a development review, be it minor or major, that's the building itself and what's going on with the building. Yeah, those are the kind of the dichotomy of what we have to examine.
So, what do we lose if we go from major to minor? I mean, what is the, I mean, we gain time, it's clear, and it would seem that that is in fact the direction to go, but what are we potentially losing in that?
You would lose, it wouldn't be a public hearing scenario for the major development review. So ordinarily it would, we would post notification that there's a major development review for this building proposal. And In this case, staff would have to employ its discretion as to whether whatever leaf provides to us in the application sufficiently meets the requirements of Article 17 of the Lions Municipal Code. I think that's about it as far as building. If you feel, if the Board of Trustees feels that staff is equipped to handle this, then I feel as staff that we are. Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions either for the Lime Leaf folks or for the pivot?
Hi, so I have a question regarding medical service providers and medical outreach. The Housing and Human Services Commission has been consulting, trying to figure out how to respond to our comp plan, which is to bring essential services to Lions, and we appreciate that LEAF is able to bring so many essential services to Lions. However, we do have a real problem with no medical service provider present in Lions, and we've reached out to Salou, and that's a no-go, and reached out to the Clinica, and that's a no-go. So I'm wondering how I guess can you offer some kind of guarantee, or how confident do you feel about being able to provide medical services once a week to the larger community? Is it just for LEAF clients, or is it for the larger community?
I assume as a leadership team, we would want to come up with some sort of a qualifying process. I imagine there would be, again, like we do with mental health care, some element of affordability and access. So someone who has really wonderful transportation and really wonderful health insurance and a really fantastic doctor in Boulder is probably going to continue going to Boulder for that care. But we're looking at the people who have difficulty affording or accessing care elsewhere. Number one, a reason that we feel like we're very likely to be successful in this is a few reasons. We've already connected with some of the map providers and some of the providers that kind of go from small town to small town to small town. Like I've had meetings with them already, and so they're aware that Lions is about to become on the map. And again, we're meeting on the 15th with this internist who also has an interest in addiction work. And so that's care he's been providing in Netherlands, and he's looking for a new place to do that. And then the third thing that makes it really possible for us, that I don't see how the HSAC could begin to pull it off, is that we have our own MPI number, which means LEAF is now a healthcare organization. We don't have to have a healthcare organization come and provide healthcare, and we can find a provider who can provide care under LEAF's NPI, can bill under LEAF's NPI. It's just a matter of finding the individual who is interested or willing or like to do it.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we might also have to lean on the Board of Trustees for conditional use for medical services. I think I looked into that for something recently, that we might have to have an additional conditional.
Okay, yeah, I can check into that.
Yeah. I thought I saw it, but anyway, so then it could also come back.
So the condition, medical is not currently allowed as a conditional use in the municipal zoning districts. I think it would still fall under nonprofit uses. I don't think it would necessarily require additional conditional use. But I mean, if that were determined to be the case, we'd have to change the code again to allow it, as it currently is not allowed in the municipal zoning district. But I don't think it would require an additional conditional use process.
Thank you, Brandon. So since you have your own MPI number, then this doctor would be taking Medicaid?
Yes, and also we're paneled across Medicaid. It looks like Medicare is going to come into the picture very soon, and then also almost all of the private companies as well. But our priority is on people, again, who can't access or afford care elsewhere, and so those are mostly going to be Medicaid people. And we're already paneled with Medicaid up in for a while.
Yeah, go ahead. So when you hear the timing that this could take 3 or 4 months, what does that do to the project? time-wise.
Well, it makes me want to go back to my team and go 3 to 4 months until what? So maybe you can tell us 3 to 4 months until anything at all? Or 3 to 4 months and we can be doing our MEP and getting materials organized, or just 3 to 4 months of nothing?
Yeah, that would be 3 to 4 months to go through the entire planning and permitting process. So.
So we'd already built that into our timeline, and there, I guess I would again want to ask our team, are there other things that we could be doing parallel to prepare us to get going? MEP as an example.
We have to have those things done before we enter into the process with the town, so it's all of our work and then another 3 to 4 months or 2 to 3 months, whatever it is that we set. And they're part of the process, so then it's like a little bit of a holding.
No.
What's the
Our engineers.
Mechanical and electrical and plumbing engineering.
Okay.
I was just gonna say also, one of the requirements of one of the fundings that we have is to get an environmental assessment. So if we can't start for 3 or 4 months, that means we can't get that funding until we do the environmental assessment, which I'm assuming would be granted access once this 3 or 4 month timeframe has happened. So it just continues to push us a little bit further down as far as getting the funding.
Why would you be able to do an environmental assessment without a?
See, I see it differently. I see if we sign a lease in April,
So you think the lease would be
you
sufficient?
have access to the building to start all of these things.
Right.
That's why
I
I was
just
thinking,
think there's not a final approval until you go through.
like, that our MEP isn't in there doing the work, but they can go in there and start to assess it and make a plan.
They can even do the work if they're willing to risk it.
Yeah.
All right,
You can do anything that doesn't require a building permit, right? And so that's what you can't do.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And we're looking forward to getting this going.
thank you. Next I'm just clearing my space. No, we have to take Sterling's for 3 days, and then I'm gonna try.
No, we haven't.
Thank you. We know we're gonna see.
Right, you people.
All right.
So next up on our workshop agenda, we have Tara Research giving us an update. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet all of you. Thanks for a little bit of your time here. Oh,
It's in the middle.
Maybe do a little introduction.
yeah, absolutely. Maybe the next slide shows. That's me. So, I figured I might come up. So my name is Rich Barone. I'm a Boulder resident. You have some words here on the slide, but brief history of my life professionally has been, I moved here in 2005 for graduate school to really immerse myself into clean energy as a career. Before that, I was more involved in information technology and software development for the financial services industry in New York. So, so I came out here, did a dual degree at CU in entrepreneurship and environmental studies. Worked at NREL for 3 years, and my career since then has been as an entrepreneur, as a consultant, as a utility professional in Hawaii for 5.5 years, and now back here in Boulder as a consultant. So full circle. I really, cover a lot of ground in the energy industry, ranging from, as I said, an entrepreneur with software play, but also as a consultant covering strategy, software, demand side management, And then when I went to Hawaii, my focus was around developing a market model and then implementing it for utilizing customer assets to help, manage the grid. So operationalizing those assets from a grid management perspective, and creating a fair and equitable compensation model to make it work to keep this alive. Other than that, a lot of work on strategy, growth strategy, and overall transition within this industry, particularly from the bottom up. So I wanted to give a quick synopsis of this project. And I think it's been an interesting journey to get to a point where the scope is makes sense to myself and others. It's really a three-phase project, and the overall objective here is to identify ways where lines can get to 100% clean energy as quickly and cost efficiently as possible. That's and I think part of that shape has taken a natural course, understanding some of the mechanics of the relationship with mean, what those constraints look like. And now it's a matter of operating within those constraints to come up with what's the most efficient model possible. So the lion's share of my work, other than of course trying to navigate what the right direction should be, has been thus far, working with folks like Aaron and Jim and gaining as much information as possible. But also speaking with me, and I finally had, and it's taken a while, but I finally had a lengthy call with them last week. And I just want to give a little color. I went into the call a little bit skeptical, to be candid, just because I hadn't met them and I didn't really understand what their posture was, what the green energy offering was all about. I can tell you that, look, the reality is extracting from a contract with me is probably cost prohibitive. It's, my thumbnail sketch of that. But that said, they seem very anxious to make sure that they're accommodating as much as possible. I think they're hearing from a lot of their members the same message, and they went out of their way on the call to really kind of over and over again talk about their responsiveness to the members, the engagement of the members. So that was good and encouraging. I wanted to also ascertain a really firm understanding of how to actually these charges accrue, and I had gotten some good background on it, so I'm sure Jim's support, but I needed to hear from them, really understand, and now they're going to be providing me with a lot of follow-up, and I don't want to get another slide where I get an update, so let me just quickly finish the rest of this and I'll circle back. After the sort of mean discussion is sort of complete and I understand the data that they're providing me, and also the data of the customers, the consumers, if you will, in Lions, I then will go into time of use assessment. And for just for quick education, time of use is simple-ish rate structure where the time value of energy, it varies throughout the course of the day. Normally, time of use rates are either 2-tier or 3-tier. You might have 2 periods or 3. And generally speaking, look, in wholesale markets, those are going to be linked to overall your capacity, availability, and the cost of that generation. In a situation like with mean, the way that the charges work, that's a little bit more complicated to understand where those spike points are for cost increases, and then how the load could look for the town that would ultimately lower costs. So that's work I've already started. And I certainly have some concerns because I don't know what the load needs to look like yet. And I'm doing a lot of research to understand what the efficacy of time of use has been historically, especially when you're not giving folks something to use to help them shift their consumption patterns. And I'll get back to that in a minute. Then the third piece is it's kind of a new idea in some respects. I wanted to look at it saying, well, look, if people can't shift their loads or we can't rely on that for that to happen behaviorally, could there be a benefit to leveraging an asset in town that would really allow the town as a collective to manipulate its consumption patterns from the point of interconnection. There are programs out there in the world that have emerged for shared storage, which can provide such flexibility. On top of that, it also provides a degree of resiliency. So I'm keen on looking into that. I have other steps to go through first, but that's my third piece. And I'll just go through each of these a little bit more of an update on the next slide. So there's a lot here, and I actually took a lot out, and I don't like a lot of words on slides, so I apologize for that much. But basically, I talked a little bit about the conversation with me, and we have some follow-ups. They actually offered me some interesting perspectives. Firstly, I wanted to pin them down for two things. It was kind of my objective, other than the cost details. I said, I really want to understand what is the time frame for getting to 100% green for the Alliance. Of course, they didn't give me a firm answer, but they gave me a reasonable time frame that was much shorter than I would have anticipated. I would paint this as their optimistic perspective, the end of 2025, which I think is pretty fast, but there's a lot of other dominoes that fall to get there. I was also concerned with, well, how do you affirm that, if you've got all of your members or many of them clamoring for green energy, how does everybody know that, we're not double and triple counting those KWHs? They didn't have a great answer for it in terms of there's not a structured audit trail. However, they acknowledge that they do their annual reports, that all members get access to those reports, and they express an openness upon request for kind of the more details. They admitted it'd be a lot of work, but I kept pressing just to, I know that, there can be shenanigans, right? And there's a premium to be paid for this service, and I wanted to make sure that there could be auditable, improvable. So I thought that dialogue was good, and I'll be looking to get some of these concepts in writing from them so that it'll be part of the final package I put together. Other interesting pieces of this conversation, there's some limits. The town can put up renewable energies, not including behind the meter stuff, renewable energy systems, but it can only be 5% of the demand. But that wasn't a closed door policy in the sense that they have other optionality where the town is eligible to put up their own plant and then sign a PPA with me so that they can count that towards their portfolio, but it's localized. So some of their members are doing that. And then there is a third option, which is, and we didn't talk about this in great detail, but there is the option of basically having a mean owned asset locally based. I don't know the details on what the economics of that look like and what the trade-offs are, but so there are some interesting elements. There's a lot of data follow-ups. The other interesting piece, and I'll leave this slide when I'm done with this because I'm trying to be respectful of time, is the concept of demand side management, and I'll spell it out. It's pretty boring stuff for those who are not in this industry, but it's really a combination of things. It's energy efficiency and demand response. And what that really means is, that the consumption patterns can be manipulated for whatever reason, either economic or emergency reasons. But they've had, this was a surprise to me. So Mean has had a history of some degree of funding available to members for demand side management programs. This is something I have asked for more details on, because as you get into the next phase of this project, part of time of use that makes it successful is if you can lower consumption or have consumption that's sort of malleable, that would actually lend itself. So I really want to understand to what extent there's real dollars available to do that. So there's more to come on that, but the lion's share of the discourse is done, and now it's just a matter of data capturing and then starting my model. The next slide just talks a little bit about the next slide is just talking about time of use. I alluded to this earlier. There's a lot of time of use programs that have already been deployed. They're all different shapes and sizes. Some are strictly consumption, some have a demand element, some have a capacity element. At the end of the day, my biggest concern with time of use has always been if you can't automate time of use, you could wind up needing, if you can't provide mechanisms for people to move their load with some devices, people may be on the short end of the stick. If they leave things the way they are, maybe they'll be paying more every month. So a few pieces I need to do is, and normally what you'll have is sort of folks who will benefit economically, just naturally, based on how they use electricity, folks that will be more or less neutral, and folks that will actually be on the downside. So understanding how the customers in lines are segmented that way is first and foremost, so I could see what the spread will look like. And then look at optionality for, and also look at costs, because implementing something like this means investing. You have to change your meters in terms of the schedules. Billing systems will need augmentation. So this isn't free. There's going to be a cost. So understanding the magnitude of those costs relative to the potential positive benefits of lowering exposure to mean costs will be what I'll be undertaking as part of the exercise. And I've really just scratched the surface on my research, as well as talking. I was at a conference last week in New Orleans, and used it as an opportunity to talk to colleagues in the industry to kind of get their take on what they've seen. Okay, and then the third part will be the the nifty bit around the storage. And SMUD, which is Sacramento Municipal Utility District, has a community storage project underway, so there's precedent for this. Think of it like this. It's an opportunity for folks to, there's a few ways to slice it, so I should say that this is still work in progress, and I need to get through the new stuff first. But the general concept is where I identify sort of the losers in the time of use model. I want to afford people the chance to buy into community storage. So that will serve as a proxy. So in other words, if I'm using this much electricity during the peak time where it's most expensive for lines as a whole, I can basically buy an apportionment, if you will, or subscribe to that storage as a way of offsetting my load for that period. This does a few things. First of all, at the macro level, that storage, if it's sized properly, allows lines to, as a town, effectively lower its exposure to those mean costs. It also allows people who would otherwise be damaged, if you will, economically by time of use, the chance to offset that. And Professor Trick will be make sure they're paying into that less than it would otherwise be exposed to an increase in their bill. But the third piece, which I think is probably the most interesting piece and not related directly to the economics, is if you find the right location for something like this. And this is, by the way, standalone. So I'm not talking about pairing this with solar, because I know that there was an endeavor and it didn't pencil out. Now we're seeing a lot of money flowing into from IRA to the state. There's also the tax credit that's been expanded into storage. So there's mechanisms for dollars that can buy this down. But if you find the right location in town, you can use this battery not just for the economics as I discussed, but it also gives you a degree of resiliency. So if there are floods or if there are outages, and whatever the conditions are, and we know we're seeing more and more of those, this could afford the community a place to go and have at least some degree of electrification localized. So I really like that element nowadays, because you never know what's going to happen, and it's an added benefit. If this thing can pencil out onto itself, now you've got this extra sort of value as well. So that's the third part of this project. And then, to be honest, there's much more to do, but this is probably even beyond the scope of what I can do for that, but I don't mind. I think it's all important. So, but I think you look beyond this, there's all kinds of implications of what's the next generation of more electrification. You're going to see more electric vehicles, you're going to see the possibility of charging. All of those things, while very good from a carbon perspective, are going to have an impact on all the stuff that I will have gone through from the economics. So that's later, but at least this is really foundational. And I think it will be helpful. At the end of the day, I think I'm feeling optimistic about the timeline of green energy, and that's great. But I want to make sure that this should be done in a way that is somewhat empowering also to the folks in line. So that means participation, like in a rate that they can affect. It means that there's flexibility. And it means that there's resilience. So that's what I'm trying to figure out at the end of the day. It can be done less costly than what is currently. So that's probably my way of thinking.
You did great. I appreciate as a fellow PowerPoint presentation person, I appreciate the fewer words on this. And I would really appreciate it if you could forward this to us. I would sure like to have it. Great, thanks, Jim. So thank you very much for your work and for the update. Are there any questions, points of discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
The ton of use stuff is really interesting. You mentioned winners and losers. Like, can you make a contrast between commercial and residential? Is one of them a bigger winner or a loser? Does it hurt commercial more than it does residential?
So I'll offer an answer, but it's rooted in complete lack of data. So but I'll just to be data. So generally speaking, and let me just add a sidebar here. The cost structure for me is really not straightforward, and I'll risk confusing everybody here. There's three buckets of charges, and one of them is based on coincident peak, which means that the peak here is coincident with their overall system peak, broader. One is not, non-coincident. So there's charges that are unrelated, so orthogonal to. So the reason I brought that up is in a more standard model, the economics are typically, like in Hawaii, I'll use that's an example I know very well, right? We were our own, each island was its own grid. So you have your load shape is pretty straightforward, right? And in fact, it's changing in some respects. But normally, you have kind of, the overnight's pretty low, and then you have like a morning peak, a little bit of a lull, and then midday kind of goes up and then back down, and then your evening peak is really that's the big dog, right? And then it comes back down. Now that's sort of standard. Now you're in Hawaii, you're starting to see that middle bump no longer exists. Most people call it the duck curve, but in Hawaii they call it Nessie curve after the Loch Ness. So why do I bring that up? Because if that were to be this sort of standard load shape of the system and appliance coincidentally, then insofar as commercial businesses generally, I mean, I don't know too much about all the retail here, but if their consumption will drop in that evening peak and beyond, then they're not going to be as exposed. And again, one of the things I have to understand is what is the commercial rate if it's differentiated from residential rate. So, because there's usually a demand charge on top of that. But I would say that it's more likely that residential customers are going to be the ones that are going to be doing the consumption during, you're done with work and winter service in the dark, or in the summer maybe you want to cool down in the home. So you're dealing with a lot more load through that, that 5 to 9 period. So that's what I would anticipate being where you're going to see a chunk of the charges starting to accrue, in which case I would surmise that it's residential, but there's always going to be folks that have business or production operations that are going to coincidentally align with those cost codes.
Okay. Another question. Speaking of lack of data, some crap I read on the internet. I was reading an article that solar, the price of solar is going down at quite a bit of rate, and it will eventually be lower than coal. So is there a possibility that 3-4 years into this, the grain rate could actually be lower than what we call the carbon rate? So what's the other one called? Or the non-grain rate?
What you mean, they're conventional?
Yes, or whatever we're on now.
Is there a possibility? Well, that's, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. Don't hold me to this on my own record. I would say there's, look, probably not anytime soon. For one reason, the production for all of the fossil fuel stuff are based on assets that have been depreciating over a long period of time. So they've been covering those fixed those fixed costs for a long time, so you just have variable costs associated with the fuel. They're having to engage in projects now, right now, to provide for the green portfolio, so those projects, at least for the next 20 years, are not going to necessarily enjoy those cheaper prices. And then the third piece I'll raise around, the hidden piece to the cost of renewable generation, unless you have a very robust portfolio where you have almost complementary production curves. So solar production curve is going to be, you can figure out, the sun comes up, sun goes down, so you're going to be during these times, but that leaves a whole bunch of time where you don't have production. And if you truly want to make fully renewable, overly simplifying, you have two choices. You either find wind resources that have a kind of an inverted production curve to the solar, so you can create a virtual base load, or you throw in things like storage, duration storage. And when you start introducing the latter, you're going to sort of erode the cost benefits of solar production because you're only going to have it proportionally to the extent. So that's a probably longer answer than you wanted, but it's complicated. And I think, not to mention the fact that there's a lot that remains to be seen. My hope would be that through the IRA investment, we'll see more US based production, because we're exposed to a lot of uncertainty with production in China. For those who don't know, we've got a tariff on Chinese solar arrays and inverters. And there was a recent case that was opened up because they were allegedly circumventing that tariff by taking all of the components, sending them to Southeast Asia, where entities there were basically assembling them together and then selling them to the US companies, which is clearly skirting the tariff. So that's currently under investigation. So that could have this sort of odd impact on cost curves as well. And who knows what the production costs will be if we do truly migrate to more manufacturing in the US. While that would be great, there's likely that it won't be cost competitive necessarily with what we're seeing in China. So there's lots of uncertainty. Like I said, I wish I had a crystal ball.
Well, we wish you did too. We pay more for it. Thank you so much for this update. Look forward to the next one.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
It's nice to meet
Feel
you.
very good. Okay, have a good night. I'm gonna take off.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. So let's take a break for a couple of minutes and then we'll start right.
everybody online too. I will call the Monday, March 6, 2023 Lions Board of Trustees meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please, for questions?
Yes, Mayor Rogan,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Farrell,
Present.
Trustee Elson, Trustee Dottie,
Present.
Trustee Edding,
Present.
Trustee Delman, and Trustee Williams.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Any discussion?
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. We'll take a reflective moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. So now's the time for audience business. I don't see anybody here in chambers. Unless y'all have something to say to me, no? Okay. Anybody online?
No, I don't see anyone.
All right, well then we'll move on to the Boulder County Sheriff's Report, Sergeant Sears.
Hello, good evening. A couple things we'll talk about the call from last week, just a couple, this Cadillac converter, or, I'm sorry, the Cadillac, net converters that I talked about a few weeks ago, the etching kits that are getting a grant for, so those, they're starting to iron out that, so they're gonna start getting information out for people to sign up, and then there'll be some times they will come to the substation to pick them up. From last month to this month, or I'm sorry, from January to February, the calls went up about 70 calls, so we had 150 calls for service in town in January, and then 219 next month. All that stuff, and then I'll take any questions or kind of give a quick rundown of the call we had near Lions High School last Thursday.
Well, I want to say thank you for following up and getting deputies out by the elementary school. When they're there, definitely it helps. So, yeah, so I really appreciate that.
I have a question about the increase in calls. Can you tell us whether this is typical of this time of year or what the reason might be?
Yeah, so looking, I think the biggest increase was traffic stuff. So we're starting to do a lot more traffic in town. I had I don't think they've entered all the tickets, but last month we had in February 27 total tickets throughout the town, and that's anything from speeding, dog at large, there's a couple vicious dog at large, a couple theft, muni theft. I think it's at the Circle K. This guy went in a few times, so let's see here. But mostly, yeah, we had 80 traffic stops last month in town. That was up. We only had 36 in January, so a lot of that is traffic. So looking at all the other typical calls, nothing's really changed a whole lot. A lot of field initiated patrols, so like extra patrols in school zones, in the park and stuff like that. That's gone up. There's only 20 in January. We had 45 last.
I got a question. You mentioned these catalytic converter theft prevention kits. Is that what you're talking about?
So yeah, in a way, they're these etching kits. So basically, it's this kit that people will sign up for to get, and they're doing it countywide. We got a grant that we weren't able to get the funds until this month. And I can't remember. I think we had like 1,600 kits or something like that for the whole county. But it's basically, residents can sign up online to get a kit and then go, come to the substation or headquarters to get that. So they'll already be registered, and then, essentially what it is, it etches a serial number into the catalytic converter. So if it is stolen and recovered, we at least can track who it belongs to. So it doesn't really prevent it from being stolen, but it's just a way to track it.
Right, that's a good thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, last Thursday, about just before 5 o'clock, we had a weapons call at McConnell and Bond Court. It was a shirtless male with a hat with what looked to possibly be a rifle or a type of firearm. We only had one call initially, but at that time, school's over, but there's still obviously activities going on in the school and around it. We had a pretty good response. The first deputy got here in less than a minute, and then the second one got here in 3 minutes. And they, the training kicks in, and they like our number one priority is safety. So we're going to wherever that threat is to take care of it, to isolate it to an area, and then after that is, working on our communication, kind of slowing things down and, doing everything else like evacuations or, notifications, things like that. So the response was good. The principal actually had a meeting with the school today. And luckily he was in his office or whatever. He saw the deputy go up. So he was like, oh crap, there's something going on. And he got the school on secure status, which a lot of people refer to like, oh my gosh, kids' schools are locked down. Well, lockdown is like hardly ever happens. That's when there's like an actual threat inside the school. That's when they go on lockdown. So it's more of a secure status with the old term was a lockout. So basically everything inside functions as normal, but just no one's leaving or coming in. So, but he went out to, I guess it was, I don't know if it's a softball team or track or something, but they were on the school ground. So he went out and got the coaches and they brought them inside. They did learn about that soccer team that was a youth soccer team that was practicing on that joint field in between the school and Bond Park. And so they weren't aware of that at the time. Neither were the deputies, of course. So basically, I just asked the town, when you see something going on, our deputies running with the light and sirens, getting out, running, or getting their rifles out. There's a reason for that. That's not like normal, and you just take that as you should probably go inside and just wait. Wait for more information from the sheriff's office in the town. And just, I know social media, we can never get ahead of social media, and it's spreads pretty fast. So I guess on our part, it's getting information out sooner to the town. So that's something we were talking about and working on is getting that information out sooner. So just know that we can't give you right that as soon as something comes out, we can't send out something, right? Because usually it's an ongoing or an active investigation, and our first priority is taking care of the situation. So just know that we will get information out, and it's the most biggest thing to take away from this is just better communication within the town. Get that information out. And I'll take that, this is my, first kind of incident in town, so a lot of learning things for me, and I'm sure that we will work on that. Communication is always the number one biggest issue, especially in this line of work is communication. So whether that's between us or, within the town. So, but yeah, just know that, our number one priority is to protect the town and the people in it. And, we had a great response, a total of 8 deputies and 2 officers from Longmont who provided some resources, a drone and stuff like that to help search the area. So.
Thank you, and I know I speak for everyone when I say thank God. That that it was a kid, the baby. And thank you for your response, and to the other deputies in the office. And, I know we have some questions for you, but I have to say that it makes me feel secure knowing that the response time is so good and that the relationships with your colleagues in other towns is so strong that they can show up here. So really appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
So I want to also reiterate, thank you. That response time is incredible. And you all willing to put your life on the line to do the work that you do for our time together is immensely grateful for that. So, and what an awful situation, thank goodness it wasn't more severe, but I did get a lot of input and feedback from different parents, and some of it I've been able to share. But I do want to go on the record on some additional just points of feedback that I did get and concerns that I think are important to express, and then I have a couple of like suggestions. So, so obviously the girls on the soccer team on the ball field, and I guess I am a little surprised, and maybe this is something to work through with the school also. But then in my imagination of how those kinds of things happen, something around a school, I would envision that there would be sheriffs or deputies all canvassing the whole particular area. So the field that's just behind, I would also assume that perhaps the principal would know, even though it's not a sanctioned school thing, it's on school property. That would be something that would be looked at in the future. So I just really wanted to raise that awareness. I think one of the things that I got feedback also was that once everything was clear and it was okay for the children that were in the school to go home, that there were still officers with their long guns out. And so I think that created kind of some of us think will relate to the MO, but not everybody, but that kind of a feeling. And so that was, I think that had some impact on kids. And if everything really was all clear, that maybe was that necessary? I don't expect an answer, but I just really want to bring it up as a concern. I know that communication from the sheriff's department went out around 9 p.m. that explains that, you know, it was some kid playing with BB gun. But I didn't see that until it was in an email from the town administrator to us at like 8 o'clock the next morning. So I don't know if there's an educational piece of where do people go to, I mean, it was disseminated, but to do. And how do we access that information? I really feel like during the process, because I had a child that was in the school, I got the school's alerts, I understood there was something going on. But there wasn't, I think the school should have had the sheriff's report and disseminated that out. So, and I'm bringing it up to you from the coordinating standpoint, you know, between the sheriff's department and school districts. Ultimately, what also happened was that there were some kids that lived 2 blocks away that walked to school every single morning because they did not know it was really resolved. They didn't want to walk to school. So if they had known at 9 p.m. the night before the story, everybody would have been like, oh, okay. So I think there was a missed opportunity there. And then, you know, so it's that communication piece that you're talking about, that it does need to be between the sheriff, the school, to the community, and at what point then the town administration gets pulled in, etc. And I understand you can't explain it in minutes, but there's the timing and lack of distribution of that information after the fact. I think we really need to get focused on. And, you know, in terms of response in the moment, it would be really interesting perhaps if we had what are the protocols for the community to understand, and perhaps it could be go into the paper and be published or something so that residents get why they're not getting more information and how frustrating that is, that they can appreciate it. Because this is protocol. That's not just lack of trying or wanting to disseminate the details. So I would just love to see if there's some way that we can maybe reassure the community going forward that we do have an involved defined plan so that they can understand, well, I should be able to expect something hopefully by this point in that process. So that's my feedback.
Can I answer some of this?
Yeah, by all means, thank you.
Thank you for that input, and like I said, the only way for us to get better is to know what we need to improve in. So one thing I forgot to mention is we have a in the moment type notification that we can push out. It's called Everbridge or Reverse 911. Right, and granted, you got to usually just goes out to that area, or we have an all hazardous polygon that we use now since the fires, but and that's something that would have been pushed out, and it's usually pushed out when there is a serious active threat, right? Like, yes, I know it sounded horrible, right? But we had only one report, and it was a possible person with a gun. And then when deputies they made contact with somebody on one of the trails or in the area when they got there, and they said that they saw the same person, but they weren't sure what it may have been a rifle, but they also said it might have been one of those large, plastic sticks that you throw balls for your dog, but they still take it seriously. That's why we still continue until we find out otherwise. But, if that would have been, multiple calls, it was 100% of a rifle or whatever, and they were, pointing at people or shooting rounds off in there, there would have been notifications sent out right away of, Everbridge is, it's pretty brief, but hey, there's an active situation going on. You're not safe outside, shelter in place, don't answer, right? Stuff like that, stay in the area. And then when we send those out, we do also send out kind of all clear, like, back to the residents or the people who get those messages, so they know that, okay, things are safe now. And since that Everbridge didn't go out, then, they didn't send up an updated one. So I think in the future, that's something, is, do send out that Everbridge that way. It's like, hey, there was an active incident, however, it's been resolved, there's no more threats involved. And that's a learning point on me, so I take ownership in that. Luckily the things that went well, right, the response, no one got hurt, it wasn't a legit situation, and I was off, and of course when things happen, it's like Mitch was off, he was heading out of town to see his mom, so he wasn't there, so but working with the school, we Richard Peoples, he's the St. Marie Valley School District head of security director, so he's the go-to person in any incident during school or even after school. He will be now the first person that is notified, and so we are working on that, and then it's just the communication piece is getting the information out. So we'll improve on that. And we did, I know people, it's mostly for the media, but there was a press release sent out, and usually we send out those hours after the fact. So I can assure you though, if there was the situation getting resolved, there was still even the slightest threat to the community, that information, something would have gone out. So, I guess you can say no news is good news, I guess, if you don't initially get something, because we wouldn't have allowed the school to be open, or, we would have sent something out if there was still an ongoing active threat. So, just want to assure everyone that if there is a threat, you will know about it, and we're not going to allow kids to walk to school if there's any slightest threat. So, and with the deputies with rifles after the all clear, like, I don't know about that, so I don't know if that was just them kind of stowing their gear and stuff like that, because we had at least 3 SWAT guys there that were just either coming on or off shift, so they might have been walking back to their cars, or who knows, but I'll just know if you get all clear and everything's safe, you're safe. I'm sure you're gonna. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for bringing up the question around communications. Thank you for clarifying. I guess I guess my only comment would be just to say how confusing it might be for somebody who's hearing the all clear, but still seeing somebody there, whether it's a SWAT person, whoever, with a rifle. I can only imagine an impressionable teenager leaving their school thinking all is well. Their principal said, all is clear, you can go home now, or somebody walking their dog nearby. And, again, it's that community outreach, right?
Right.
And just making sure the messaging is consistent and everybody's giving the same messaging. So thank you for paying attention to that and learning from that.
Any other remarks? Well, thank you again, Sergeant Sears.
Sure, thank you.
Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, of course.
Stay safe. I hope you're stopping by town hall to get your coffee. or whatever it is.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is ordinances and public hearings. We have a public hearing for the second reading of ordinance 1141. An ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending chapter 13, article 3, section 90 of the Lyons Municipal Code concerning fees for the connection of fire sprinkler or fire suppression systems. So staff report.
Well, Mayor and trustees. So again, on second reading, this was an ordinance that would help clarify for the future what we felt was a service connection and that a fire suppression system or a fire sprinkler system were not considered domestic water use. Therefore, would not have tap fees or water rights that would be required. And this was just to document that in the code. There were no concerns or changes that I noted from first reading, so it was still the same.
Any questions for Director Kaplan?
Hi. I noticed in the whereas section of the 8.1, it mentions electric rate structure. And I was just curious if it's meant to read something else, or is it even necessary in there? Should it say water tap service connection fee structure? Or is that just not even a necessary paragraph?
Good catch.
Brandon's reading.
Okay, either Brandon or Aaron.
I gotta wait for mine to come up.
Okay. You don't have it memorized.
Sorry, I'm pulling up mine too. Yeah, it should be water structure.
Yeah.
We can make that change that's just an error, so I can make that change.
Okay, so does that need to be an amendment or is that just
I think it's errata we can just fix.
errata? Okay. So if there's no other questions, I will open the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak about ordinance 1141? Doesn't look like it. So I'll close the public hearing and entertain the motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1141, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, and then chapter 13, article 3, section 90 of the Lyons Municipal Code concerning fees for the connection of fire sprinkler or fire suppression systems on second reading.
Is there a second? Thank you, Trustee Doman. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Everybody? Okay, and then we have a first reading of ordinance 1142, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving an increase in the marijuana sales tax to 5%. Director Icestone, do you have the staff report for this?
I do. As requested at the last board meeting, staff has drafted an ordinance to increase the local marijuana sales tax rate from 3.5% to 5%. And as a reminder that the Board of Trustees does have the authority to do this increase up to 10% without voter approval. This increase would bring in approximately $45,000 to $55,000 in additional revenue for the general fund. A comparison to local and other mountain communities was done and reviewed at the last board meeting. I did include that comparison as well as the example that I provided at the last board meeting that showed the impact of on the sale for the potential increase in the rate, as well as a comparison to dispensaries in unincorporated Boulder County. Staff did reach out to the 3 local dispensaries last week. So far, we've only received 1 response, which was not in favor of the increase. We can provide responses of the other 2 dispensaries if any comments are received, in addition to the comment that we did receive via email. I'm happy to provide those. And with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Questions for Director Olson? No, thank you for your work. This is great information. So then I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1142 on first reading and through a public hearing on second reading.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Trustee Williams. Is there any discussion?
Only curiosity, 2 out of the 3 didn't even speak.
One's not here to. If you could use your microphone, I think that would be.
I said just curiosity that 2 out of the 3 didn't respond.
If you respond by second reading, we can get that input at second reading, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, so they still have a second reading to respond, and it would be great to hear from them.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to note for the public record that if the town of Lyons was to increase the sales tax rate to 5%, we would be joining the ranks of Breckenridge, Lafayette, and Netherlands. So it's not like we're avoiding this. And it would bring an extra revenue of between $45,000 and $50,000. It was not negligible. For an extra $1 or $1.50 and a $50 retail product.
Thank you. All right, then I will call for vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Oh, okay, so just for clarification, this is first reading. And because this is an ordinance, it goes through a process that includes a second reading and a public hearing before it's finalized. And so the second reading and public hearing will be during our next meeting, and that's when the public can speak about the issue. Thank you. Alrighty. Consent agenda. Would you consent agenda into the record?
Yes, item 1 are the February 21st, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting minutes, and item 2 are the March accounts payable.
Is there a motion to approve the consent?
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
For a second.
Second.
Is there anything anyone would like to remove from consent tonight? All right, then I'll call for a vote on consent.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so we have no boards and commissions tonight. Right, so we'll move on to general business, which I think we're a timing record here. Which is discussion direction staff on Lyons promoting a Boulder County solar co-op. Aaron, would you like to give a staff report?
Sure. So Boulder County had reached out, their director of sustainability, climate action, and resilience, reached out to see if Lyons would be interested in supporting this solar co-op that was being put together. They showed the example of Broomfield that is currently done it. They're working on one with Denver. Actually, I should say that the company that Boulder County has a contract with, Solar United Neighbors, has done co-ops in these two other areas. And so Boulder County is moving forward with this, and they were just reaching out to the various municipalities or other governments to see if they wanted to help support that, to put out their documentation that would show that they are in support of this, to help circulate it to their constituents, see if they were interested in that. Did put that out to the Sustainable Futures Commission and to the Utility and Engineering Board, both of which showed their support. I was on an initial meeting with them on that and really was one of the few looking at it, say, from the utilities perspective, and couldn't really see any concern. Wanted to make sure they were aware we were our own electric utility, and would that have any concerns? They did not see any there. The way that this is set up, that the co-op reads first everyone who wants to try to apply for it, and then gets everyone set up, and then it goes out to see a Solar United neighbor will go out with an RFP to find someone who will contract to do all of these solar installations, and therefore hopefully get a lower rate. I believe he said it was, the one they did was going to be 10%, maybe it was even up to 15% less for everyone compared to what it was individually and looking at one company. So it seemed positive. As I put in here, my only trying to think what could be a concern, and it's not really a concern, but was just this optics of, if we really push for this and nobody in line's got it, it would seem a little distraught or negative, not distraught. But again, sometimes you just have to really reach out to try, and you don't get it, you have to put people forward to try. And in the end, what I thought, so that's my report on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions for Eric?
So, how does this work? We need like a certain amount of people that would want to be in this co-op in order for it to be allowed. Like,
You don't need to do anything, moving forward. So it's really just a matter of how much do you want to promote it, so that people in Lyons are aware of it, so that they maybe see that the town as the government is saying, hey, this is out here, you might want to look into this to move forward. You don't have to do anything, and they're still moving forward. And if somebody else in Lyons heard about it, they could still go out and register to be a part of the co-op.
I can provide a little more. That's just something for the meeting. It's a co-op installation. So instead of piecemeal installations, look for those area houses. It's across all of them. Once they get the required amount, then we send it out. See what we do. So if they don't need 10 people for Lyons, we need, say, 30 people for Boulder. So it's not a certain requirement for Lyons. I don't know what the exact. It was a minimum.
And right in here, the minimum is much, everything we were looking at, they were capping it, sort of saying 200 might be the limit. They could look at going bigger, but they have to have something. So they're both in Broomfield, and now their concerns in Denver are getting too far over their cap than it was, but if 30 sounds like a number they might need to get it off the ground.
That's a great clarification.
Yeah, helps understanding. I just was curious if, so we put our, we say, yes, great, we want to promote this co-op, but what are they going to do to educate our community so that they can make sure that they have an opportunity to apply and be a part of that? I guess I just want to make sure that we say we're going to do this, but then they forget to show up in Lyons and say, hey, does anybody want to participate and actually apply? That's my just.
And some of it is they want to know how much we want to do that effort. So are we going to be the ones reaching out with our social media to really promote it? They are going to have a big kickoff. There was discussion on if they could do multiple. They really felt they probably could only do one. There was discussion where that would be. Last I heard, the biggest center they had was maybe in Lafayette. But they did say they were not able to do individual events at all the various municipalities around like Netherlands. And so it would be us promoting it, trying to get people from Lyons to potentially go to that, stating there is this open house, giving out that type of information.
Gotcha.
And also too, they did say if they, all it is looking for information. So if you sign up, you're not locked into it. So it's not a requirement that you sign up and you be happy. You still have a choice of the cost as is it cost effective for you? That's what I got.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go round robin. This is direction. Do we want to know? Boulder County Solar Co-op?
Yes, we do.
I actually Googled or searched for comp plan, and it's listed in there about 10 different policies related to solar, so, yes, so should.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Once they know something.
Eventually it'll say there was something, and I agree, and I think especially since the SSB and the UEB are recommending it, there's no downside. It was promoting it, and hopefully it means that some more people get solar. So pretty great, so thank you. Okay. Next we have discussion direction regarding naming of alleys. Director Kevin?
Ooh, the Richard.
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to promote him.
I'll do it free of charge tonight only. Thanks for the time to talk about what seems on the surface to be kind of a not that important topic, naming alleys. Like naming alleys, but interestingly, it is. It's come to light that most of our alleys are not named, and that's not uncommon. If you go around anywhere in the country, especially towns that were built and designed in the late 19th century, you'll find that the alleys are not named because people didn't have to worry about it so much at that time. It was like, oh, that's the alley between whatever, Stickney and Seward. However, times have changed, and there is a desire by town staff to name the alleys. And there's a couple of impeti for that. One is emergency services provisions. I've spoken with both Assistant Chief Steve Fishke of Lions Fire and with Sergeant Sears regarding this topic of naming alleys, and they very much support it. They find confusion, especially Sergeant Sears gave me a couple of relevant examples that have happened during his time. I don't know if that was here in Lyons. Actually, one was in Lyons. That the sheriff's deputy wasn't exactly sure where to respond to because they didn't know where they were. Is this the alley on the south side of Stickney Avenue or on the north side of Stickney Avenue? Where is this between? And so a really easy out for that for emergency responses is to name the alleys. In addition, from a planning and permitting lens, we have already in existence many accessory dwelling units that were built before anyone came up with the term accessory dwelling unit. And we hope to have more as a part of wise land stewardship and land use and affordability in Lyons. With that said, we have all of these ADUs just now, even if you skip land use hopes, we have all these accessory dwelling units now that don't really have a proper address. And that makes identification hard, and it also makes it easy for people to have accessory dwelling units without permitting them. As part of staff's intended desire to identify all accessory dwelling units that exist, it would be great if we had named alleys. We have people who have parcels that here's a great example I found just today in researching for tonight's meeting. There's a couple of parcels that have addresses called Stickney Street, but they are not on Stickney Street, and the only access to them is this alley. And the alley in some maps is colloquially referred to as Stickney Alley, but there is no such thing as Stickney Alley. Stickney Alley is a misnomer. Really, that should be Bloomfield Alley. If you continued our one named alley to the east, projected it to the east. So the owners of these, or the residents of these parcels of land, have an address of Stickney Street. There's no access to them from Stickney Street, so why should they have that as an address? And that's pretty common, whether it be parcels that have been divided or just accessory dwelling units that are on a unified parcel. I do want to make a clarification to what I just said and what was also in my staff report, which was Director Kaplan kindly informed me that there is another real live alley. McCall Alley is an officially named alley. There's one parcel with a McCall Alley address. Ironically, that address is actually incorrect in our address grid system. The address is 940 McCall Alley, and in reality, because McCall is an east-west directing alley, it should be the 400 block of McCall Alley, so it should be a 400 something address. Or sorry, 300 block. It should be a 300 something address. So we have some addressing issues afoot that would be kind of readily remedied with the naming valleys. To that end, as people may have seen, trustees may have seen in your packets, I offered some names, and I wanted to. The idea behind these names is I felt it wouldn't be good to name them after people, with the exception of the existing Bloomfield Alley. I don't know who Bloomfield was, and McCall Alley. I don't know who McCall was. Probably not C.W. McCall of eastbound and down rolling over Texas. That's all. Anyway, so yeah, that one I don't even know where. So the names that I suggested have more to do with like local geography, local geology, local botany. We don't have to use any of these names, but they were ones that came to mind that kind of represent things about lions. And a couple of them were somewhat site specific. Like I think there should be a Norton Alley. There's a name. Take that back. One is a name. Norton Alley because the northernmost portion of Central Lyons is a different plat than Nortonville plat, which was later subsequent to the town of Lyons plat. So there's nothing in town that I'm aware of that's named after Mr. Norton, who was the owner of a stone quarry. That person only, but I've heard ideas of naming things after mayors or after other important residents, but I think that really might not be the best idea and could invite some heated discourse where we go with something a bit more like non-intrusive, such as geography, geology, botany. It might go a little bit better. So that list of names you can read through at your leisure, but I'm happy to entertain any questions tonight.
Thank you. So, well, I have some questions, but I'll let other folks.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I had no idea there were 12 alleys and that most of them were not named. I appreciate this list of, based on geography and botanic features. I'm just curious, when, for example, I'm just looking at Chokecherry Alley or Ponderosa Alley or Prickly Pear Alley. Is it something that residents can actually identify? Like, is there like a ponderosa tree in that alley, or is there a prickly pear in that alley? Like, does it connect at all with the geographic features of that alley?
That's a great question. There might be, if we found an alley that had a ponderosa tree in the backyard or a prickly pear that was growing in the backyard, but those are more typical plants that can be found in and around lines. There are ponderosas, there are prickly pears, there are chokecherry. They're native plants to our area.
And I would say that for tonight's discussion, let's focus on number one, do we want to name the alleys? And number two, how do we want that process to look? And then at some point in the future, we do look. Okay.
obviously, if the Lions Fire Protection District and the Boulder County Sheriff's Office is saying this is an issue when it comes to emergency situations, this needs to be resolved. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And what was the next thing is? What's the process? Right, so I would love to discuss the process, of course, from a as teacher's perspective, I can't help but get kids involved. And I'm sure there's a myriad of ways of going about this. But I do appreciate the list of options.
Sure thing. Thank you, Trustee Derek.
So last night, I brought this up to the student advisory committee because they were very interested in the names of the alleys. Sure. So if you want a whole list of joke names, I can get. My favorite was Bowling Alley. Trash can alley, raccoon alley. They were thinking everything they could with alleys, but yeah, we could do that. But we did have some intelligent conversation that the name should be phonetic and they should be easy to pronounce in case of emergency and not confusing. So we can go back to that. But you can get our info there.
Oh, yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
So
I think it's absolutely marvelous and wonderful. I was back in my little tiny hometown in Appalachia in eastern Kentucky. And they have their alleys named, and it's actually bothered me here since I moved here. It's been like, I mean, really, if place in Kentucky can name its alleys, we can me. So I just when I saw this, it was like, oh, I love it. I love it. I also, so that we don't have McChoke Cherry, alley. I really love it of particularly elementary school students doing it, but having options. And so, these are, they've all got to be, plans or whatever. And also just on one thing related to that. And that is that they not be words that have different meanings in different parts of the nation, since these can become addresses.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I have a question. So, so my address, which is Stickney, in various different places, it's Stickney Street, it's Stickney Avenue, and there have been all kinds of confusion with official things because some official government things don't recognize the address in a certain way. So my curiosity is about once we name the alleys and assign addresses, how is that promulgated to official channels like the Postal Service and the government, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you, Mayor. So the first thing is that the plat that exists, the 1929 amended plat, which was a part of your packet, that has to be opened and amended again. Yeah, and Clerk Vasquez knows a bit more about that than I do. But it's something that would be a process to go through amending that plat. And as far as correcting errors in nomenclature, so like the plat at that time had Stickney Street as Stickney Avenue and Seward Street as Seward Avenue. At some point, someone decided that east-west rights of way should be streets, and then the numbered north-south rights of way should be avenues, even though the plats don't say that. And part of that goes back to that discrepancy between the town of Lyons plat and the Nortonville plat, which were combined into the amended 1929 plat that created alleys formerly platted to begin with.
Go ahead, Aaron.
As Dolores would have it too, but we were both working because we've worked on this before. One was when we even had the I think it was 429 Reese subdivision, and they became 429 and a half in the back. So we had to deal with that. And we have a list then of the different XL who you have to give the addresses to try to get that changed. The alleys may add a little bit more, but we have to work through the county I think you also should be aware there are gonna probably be some concerns by people for their addresses. We are gonna have to work through how we deal with those that now have a half in the back and are in the alley, and then their alley becomes a different name. So 429.5 Reese. In that case, she's waiting for the new alley so she can have a new address, but there are others who have been there. We also have some that are in the alley and we're given a whole new address in a different place. There are a number of little idiosyncrasies, as we all know, that are going to need to be worked through for that, in addition to working through these various entities of making that change. And so that people are aware, I was told by the county that, again, mortgages and things like that are under your specific survey and plat. They're a legal description, not an address-based description. So you may need to get that changed, but legally, your title and your mortgage are based on the plat, on the survey document, the legal description.
Okay, and so it's just one more comment, and then I know that you'll send it. I think we need to consider what the impacts of an address change would be in terms of, you know, how does that affect somebody's credit report? Right, you know, so I would love to see kind of a holistic report out of everything an address change can affect, because the last thing we want to do, I think, is name an alley, change an address, and find out that somebody was infected in that way.
That's all I was wanting to say is this has some longer implications. And if we do clean this up, staff would certainly like to clean up some other areas as well. And we have our street, our drive, our avenue. When a sheriff responds, they're like, which part? And it is hard. So and then for those who don't know, it's really interesting, but Nortonville before the 1929 plat, just to be different than Lyons, their streets were numbered first, second, third, fourth, fifth, going west to east, and Lyons did first, second, third, fourth, fifth to go east to west. And so when we get legal descriptions, we have to see which plat was this under, because First Avenue in Old Town was on the west side. It's really, it's a pretty intricate thing to try to bring up to date. One other area that we should mention, David, when you're doing your list of, you know, other than emergency services and responses, is we've heard from numerous people about FedEx, UPS, and Amazon deliveries. They get delivered to the house in the front if they're in an ADU, and they never know when it's delivered. They have to go running out there every hour so that it's taken. So this would also help with those deliveries to the folks that are living in ADUs that face off of alleys. But it is not just a simple name the alleys. This will be a pretty complex process to take on, but it should be fun.
So can you come back to us with kind of an idea of what the implications are and how the process might work?
And we should probably talk with the postmaster, should probably.
Yeah.
Trustee.
Is there any cost to it? That's what I'm experiencing.
More to homeowners, I think, to change documentation, envelopes, records, like to redo all your evidence for them.
But for us, it's the town, it's just our staff.
And making signs and installing them.
And I think obviously communication about this is going to be super duper important.
Right.
So that people don't wake up one day and have themselves in the grass.
I'm on Raccoon Alley.
Where am I? So it seems like it's an opportunity to straighten out things. So last time they have a problem, they get people still Canyon Drive, and then suddenly things are corrected, we still Canyon Road. So I have to research your road, it's just from Canyon Drive, and it's ever since. I'm assuming it's CDOT, put the sign up at 66 in Stone Canyon that says Stone Canyon Road, not Stone Canyon Drive. So I'm betting we have a bunch of roads. Are we just opening a hornet's nest?
It's gonna be
Agreed.
challenging.
It's an important one, I think, that grapple with.
I would certainly appreciate getting this.
It'll help in the future with on multiple fronts to rectify this.
And then we have a Nolan and a Nolan.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's,
I would
Take
say,
it in steps.
we could do the naming of the alleys just for emergency response measures to start.
Right.
And then start tackling some of these other,
Sure.
100-year-old issues.
yeah, that could be one route about it. There's also the addressing numbers issue that we might want to also contend with. Like the example I gave on the one McCall Alley address, but there's others. I saw, I've seen some on, this would be Second Avenue that are numbered incorrectly. The numbering scheme goes from a 200 to 300 block, then skips ahead to a 600, then falls back to a 500. And so it's, yeah, it's just a couple of quirks. One thing that I might add is, as much as it would be great to open it up to a vote of the people to do this, it would take forever and cause problems. So I do think it's something that we should limit input if we want to have a public input process. I understand the desire for public input, but that can also be problematic.
Yeah, and I think of it more as a public education. Although I'm sure, people are gonna want to have input, I would, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But definitely it'll be an education process that we'll have to push out well before we actually take the action.
I only just want to say this so I don't forget it later. But I almost think that it would be wise to get the Housing and Human Services involved with maybe people who might end up finding it too overwhelming. And there's somebody that's, having issues getting their mortgage changed and their driver's license changed and some of those things. There may be some people who find that completely overwhelming and time consuming. So maybe at some point that might need to be a task that HHS would actually help us with. That's down the road, but just an idea.
So is that direction there?
Yeah.
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 Great. All right, so our third general business item is follow-up from our goal setting retreat that we had on Saturday. And I want to thank everybody again for coming and participating. I think it was a great retreat. We were really pleased with everybody's participation and staff too. I mean, to ask you to show up on a Saturday morning for 3 hours is a lot. It's a lot. So really appreciate it. I don't have a lot of follow-up personally on this. I am working on drafting some legislative priorities that we'll talk about the next meeting. So, for those who don't know, that's so that any trustee, including myself, can go testify in front of the state legislature without having to have the subject be an agenda item on a board meeting to get approval. So we approve our legislative priorities, then that tells us what our priorities are. But curious whether there's any other input from Saturday anybody would like to share.
I think it's really important for a board, whichever board, actually, whether it's a board of a nonprofit or a corporate board or board of trustees. I think it's really important for us to take a look halfway for our midterm or even annually, I would say. This just happens to be, it's been a year almost. I think it's just really important to sit back and reevaluate where we're at and look at our priorities. So I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem for bringing this idea. Because I thought it was very fruitful, very productive, and it felt really good to review our accomplishments. We have gotten a lot done. And that feels really good. And it's also motivating and incentivizing for the year to come, right? So I think it was 3 hours very well spent. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, then we will move on to trustee reports. I'm gonna start to my left with trustee Olson.
It's gonna be quick. SFC minutes.
EAB that last time we met, I haven't seen the meeting. EAB meets this Thursday. The SFC meets again. On Tuesday, we're running. I don't think that's on real.
I'd love to take trustee Elson's time, if that's okay. So I have a one pager. So a lot has been going on with Housing and Human Services, actually. We haven't met as a commission, but we will be meeting next Monday. In fact, the Economic Vitality Commission and Housing and Human Services will both be meeting next week. However, Housing and Human Services has been pretty busy with the Lions Valley townhomes. So I'm trying to transition from Summit Housing into Lions Valley townhomes. It's getting, we're just getting closer and closer. And so it's really exciting to hold two public informational sessions at the library, one on February 25th and one on March 1st. Over 60 people attended, as you saw in the administrator's report. And actually this Wednesday, there will be two sessions to help people gather documents, etc., so that they are ready, with a complete file when the application window opens, hopefully mid-April. So it's interesting that you recommended, Mayor Pro Tem, that the Housing and Human Services Commission help residents with their change of address, etc. But I feel like we're already practicing helping people with, documentation, etc., because there's a long list of documents that are required. And it's been really, really good for us to work more closely with the Highland Property Management company, Sarah in particular, who will be managing the Lions homes in the future. So it's been really good to understand what that process, what the application process looks like, and how she has managed to public property. So regarding human services, I guess regarding housing, I attended a DOLA webinar regarding the Colorado Affordable Housing Toolkit on February 27th. And I was pleased to discuss Proposition 123 with Mayor Rogan and Turner and Administrator Simonson. I'm not sure if anybody else has heard of Proposition 123. It's basically our income tax revenue, which is equal to 0.1% of Colorado's taxable income, will be dedicated to create a state affordable housing fund. And it will actually be the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, otherwise known as CHAPA, which will manage this fund. So the state is taking this housing crisis seriously and dedicating income towards this. I also, when it comes to human services, I attended the Human Services Alliance of Boulder County General Membership meeting that was on Friday. And there were many nonprofit partners, actually, many, I would say, nonprofit agencies from Boulder County, and the mayor of Boulder was in attendance, and I hope you don't mind, I represent the town of Lyons. The mayor of Boulder actually brought forth a really cool idea that I hope will come back to us, and I think he might connect with you at some point, regarding a sales tax, a 1.5% sales tax that will be ending soon, but that he would like to repurpose for mental health support. And the more we hear about COVID-19 crisis, we heard from Leaf earlier, that'll be a county ballot, but I just think that it's something that we probably want to learn more about, and something we might want to promote and endorse. The EBC will meet next Wednesday, February 15th, and just two events I want to draw attention to this Saturday, Lucky Lions race. I think they have enough volunteers. It's going to be a 5K and 10K. Residents can still sign up. That'll take place this Saturday morning, and then the Winter Wonderland final concert will take place on March 25th from 2 to 4 at Ford Park. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I've got two. Aaron, I could not attend the last meeting. You recall anything of interest from the meeting?
And we talked about the solar co-op, went over the finances, the way I do them. Some additional talk on changes that I'll probably be bringing forward to allow more solar for residential. And KW will update 1.5. That should be at your next meeting. I think that's. You're not head up plot on the.
Oh, she's so far.
Oh, I'm right.
an applicant for the commission.
Okay. Oh,
Sorry, I wasn't sure.
and then the student committee, they did meet last night, we were in here, they spent a lot of time on names for alleys. And they're gonna mail them to you, do what you want with it. But they had a really good time with it. They are counting Jackson's days until they graduate, meetings until they graduate, so they have only like 3 or 4 meetings left until they graduate. So, and they will all be leaving, except for one, and so she is been named the chair for next year. They did spend a lot of time talking about how they're going to recruit for next year, and they tried to make sure that they get both seniors and juniors. So they can go whole, which is supposed to go. So the chair next year will be Betsy Soma. So that's fantastic, but we need it will be a whole new batch of members after that. They did talk a little bit about just I think we put some on the agenda as far as affordable housing. And I think the next generation of kids is going to be very willing to accept alternative forms of housing, cargo container housing, tiny homes, etc. They're all over that. And so I think if we go in the future with affordable housing for other type of housing stock, there's very really good idea for what whatever, they're gonna be very fluid. They also are spending more time talking about the but they're gonna ask pass on the ideas pretty much.
Yes, okay, so. At the last PCDC workshop, people had Casey Pearson come from DOLA. And talks to us mainly about community development, is especially timing and obtaining measures. Some of the various topics included water, land use integration, annexation policies, solar trends on aging and public health hazard, water equity and inclusivity, affordable housing, as well as various strategies that what the town can do to encourage more housing development. And I actually really, that was a really interesting one. Social media, ADU, and short-term rentals. So, or the challenges of ADUs and short-term rentals. And so, Pennant invited Mitch Hendrick from DOLA, who is the expert on short-term rentals and ADUs, to kind of help give the PCDC a good level set in a balance of pros and cons. I think a lot more around short-term rental at the moment. And so what we maybe need to consider doing to adjust our policies or not. And then they're going to continue to evaluate priorities that they gave us in our packets. And they're going to pair it with the comp plan and the long-term, short-term development projects that kind of gives us. And I think that's all. Thank you.
So since our last meeting, Parks and Rec doesn't have that. History Preservation Committee is right out the events that we have approved with $25,000 grant. And it's probably a big one. It's very good. I don't have all the info on that, so I'll let you know that. It's for a historical context survey. If I may like to get a one day, which was archaeology and historic preservation of areas. So that's the only thing I would have would be in terms of our meeting on Saturday, that was what I think for me. We're putting together 3 hours, if we're going to effectively steer us.
It was Victoria.
We did it together.
It's I was telling my husband, that was the most fun, productive board retreat I've had, and I've had retreats from many different boards, and they can be painful, but this is what the opposite, so anyway, you're not, yeah. Okay, so my report,
today I went to see Kamala Harris. And although I didn't get to meet her, it was still a thrill. And I got to connect with a lot of our peers. And turns out mayors aren't important enough to get on the list, but state reps are. And so I got the lowdown from Janice Farshman, who got to meet her, but it was exciting. They were there talking about the infrastructure bill, and one little tidbit I learned that I thought was interesting is that in that bill is enough money to replace every lead pipe in this country in the next 9 years.
Wow.
Whereas previously only people who could afford to replace their pipes, could replace their pipes, which meant that people who were economically disadvantaged suffer the health consequences for generations. So, so I thought that was very inspiring. I attended the presentation that Administrator Simonson gave to the FEMA folks who were here. It's an incredibly moving presentation that I think would be worthwhile for us all to see at some point. And it was great to meet them. And it sounds like the rest of it went really well, but I'll let you try to talk about that. And I did have dinner with Janice Merchant after her town hall here. So thanks to everybody who could make that, and hopefully we'll have more in the future. She let me know about a bill that sounds promising that would give local governments the right of first refusal to purchase properties for affordable housing. So hopefully we can see that. And then, okay, finally, and we talked about this at our retreat, tea with trustees. I'm going to volunteer myself for the last Sunday in March, which would be Sunday, March 30th. In the afternoon, exact time TBD, to be at a coffee shop or some other place to talk with us. So what is that? 26th. Thank you. My eyesight's not good. Sunday, March 26th. So I'm looking. Yeah, March. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm looking for a volunteer to join me, knowing it's spring break. Anybody?
I'd be happy to join you, but I have to be out next weekend.
Great. We'll get you up 8:45. Please note for the record that Trustee Williams is generously offering.
I'll just kill the church if I have to.
We don't want that. Okay. And finally, I have had a lot of interest from folks, other elected folks, about doing a tour of Lions Valley townhomes, maybe before it's completed. People are really curious to see what this looks like, and can we, you know,
It's a big construction right now. I mean, a month ago maybe, but they have, every little house has different things going on. So it's hard for me to get in and out myself. So we can see what might work. Maybe when they finish the first 4 houses in the park court and they're moved on to one.
well, maybe we can talk to Paul and see what because that would be good. Yes.
And the other day at our public information session, Administrator Simonson gave a really good tip about accessing from the Ridge Line Trail above. So if people can't wait, then you can look over. Yeah, I'm actually excited to do that because I'd like to get a bird's eye view too. So that's the insider's tip. I'm passing on.
Okay.
I just did that the other day. It's worth it.
It is worth it.
It is. It's, you get a great view.
Okay.
Nobody is trespassing.
Tell the Lions property, thank you.
Nobody's trespassing. Okay, administrators report, please.
Thank you. As the mayor said, we did have a visit by FEMA and Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management recently. They sent about 20 staff up to Lions to meet with pretty much Tracy Sanders and myself to look at all of the projects we have yet to close out with FEMA. And so there's like, I haven't got this wrong yet. 34. But anyway, so they were able to get their eyes on every project and build some confidence in what we rebuilt. There was, Department of Homeland Security was here as well. They hadn't been up here since, well, the Second Avenue Bridge open house, so they were happy to get out into the field as well. Was just an excellent visit with them and tour. They repeatedly said this exceeded their expectations. And they feel that the work we've done blends in very nicely with our natural environment, especially this time of year when it's so dull and everything's bare. And that they said if you did not know better after these 9 years, you would know that had a flood. Everything is just built back so well naturally, and the riverbanks and things like that. And then they did help out Oscar Blues, had 25 of us for lunch on a Wednesday, so that was nice for that as well. So it was an excellent visit with them. The person that Tracy Sanders has worked with for about 8 years is retiring at the end of the month. And so he's very, very concerned. He is the only person, he's like her main contact. And so it was really important to him to get the rest of his team up here and have some ownership in this and be able to see the projects so that as they go to close them out, they'll feel more confident.
Does this change any of your thinking about the potential clawbacks? Do you think we're looking better?
You know what it is, Tracy indicated, there will be projects that there's going to be a few things that are ineligible. But in talking with him, I mean, the clawbacks can come from the Office of the Inspector General, which can come after FEMA closes it out. So no way to speak on their behalf, but they feel really good about our projects. And that's why he said he was bringing them here. He said, I want to show my staff how to do this. So it was really positive. We both felt very relieved, very excited that we're going to be able to get this done now. And they won't have so many questions that really get into the minutia. That's what he wanted them to see. He said not many towns have 30 some projects. Other communities around us had 2 or 3, So to be able to see that, not to get into the weeds about what wood was used or what nuts and screws were used, but to really look at how the community built back more resilience, which is amazing. So it was awesome. He was so touched. This is a man getting ready to retire at the end of the month. He was in tears. He was so happy with our project. It was touching. So that was an excellent visit. We did, unfortunately, the bids for the US 36 Broadway Avenue project, as you guys know, have been out for bid for several weeks. The bid opening was last week. Only one bid was submitted. So we can't move forward with one bid. So staff have met, going to readjust a few things. We did reach out to the folks that came to the pre-bid and then didn't submit to see why didn't you submit, to get better ideas. One group was just awarded 2 roundabouts, or 2 of them were awarded roundabouts in Estes. And they want those done this summer too, so they kind of are off the table. One said they really was heartburned to try to get this done by Memorial Day. And then another said, would we consider going back out and consider 1 lane of traffic during the week for those summer months, which I think we can do. We just need to have 2 lanes open that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And holidays. So we're going to adjust a few things and go back out for bid. I think Tracy said they would go next week. So. It is going to be 3. So this project is probably not going to be done. But if we can stay with 1 lane for part of that, we're going to have to go with it. Otherwise, it's going to get pushed back to next fall, and then that does not work with the matching funds. So this was a real is very unfortunate that we received from it. Mr. Kimmett was able to make some inroads with Google Maps content partners. They now have a relationship with municipalities as kind of a trusted partner that if he sends them certain types of files and has a direct contact, he can make some suggestions to name changes in areas we don't want people going. It's like that. But so he has found that niche and will be working on that with folks. Grant news, Cassie, Director Eiston put together a new grant tracking file. We gave you an example of that in your packet. So that as you guys are working with your boards and commissions, and as we continue with the need for matching funds, you know, how much is already out there and committed, or how much we're going to have to find if we are awarded certain grants, just that now that the 104 grants that we've completed the last 9 years is done, we can start a fresh file. We don't need that big, huge thing anymore. Also, some exciting news that happened today was we heard from the Boulder County Collaborative, who was our partner for the Community Development Block Grants for Disaster Recovery, CDBG-DR. Today, I signed 3 more closeout documents with them. And so McConnell Bridge, Second Avenue Bridge, and the stormwater projects for the summer are now officially closed out from the DR perspective. So now we can free up the remaining funds from them and keep moving. That was exciting, especially for Erica and Tracy, who worked for years. Other than that, that Vitalent blood drive that was the town's first ever sponsored was extremely successful. And we had enough donors to save 89 lives in our little town in just a few hours. So next drive is May 2nd in the afternoon instead of to try another time frame. So get signed up if you'd like to. I thought it was great. So any questions for me from the public or others that you're inquiring?
Actually do. I was curious about the money, I'm not sure how, I don't know, it's not a grant, but the money from the spill that happened on Apple Valley. What's happening with that? How is that going to be considered spent, and maybe some suggestions?
Sure. There was an article that came out that said that the state would be contacting us to brainstorm and discuss ways to use that money and how it would be allocated between the different parties. Not gotten that email at all yet. So my guess is that happened quickly. The news picked up on it, advertised it, and probably will take a little bit to get that step.
I was just wondering if there's a chance that you could ask them to be
EAB, yes, it has to be used for ecological. They've already started.
I figured they did, and I just want to make sure we didn't miss them.
Sure, we will want to include them, but we really don't know yet what the parameters will be and if we will even get in. So hopefully soon.
I have a comment and a question. First, I want to offer my congratulations to town staff for the fabulous FEMA visit and for managing 104 grants that took slides, closing on 3 of the CDBGR. That's really fantastic news. We've been so fortunate to have such competent staff help us navigate the flood recovery process. And I have a question regarding Google Maps. So can you confirm whether Railroad Avenue shows up as one way on Google Maps? And can you tell me whether Evans will be omitted as a shortcut during summer weekend traffic?
Cannot confirm or deny. I did put in my first request, and the first request was to show Railroad as one-way westbound because currently it shows it as 2-way. Second request was to designate Evans, Park, and Third between Evans and Park between Second and Fourth, and then Third Avenue itself as residential. There's a way that they can tweak how Maps works, Google Maps works, that doesn't use those streets in a typical direction sense. It can't block them off. We can't designate them as private only, you know, they're public avenues, public rights of way. But they can alter the way that Google Maps would identify them as a potential path through town. And so I put in that request.
Thank you. So I have a question about the bear food bins. So excited about those.
So what we're looking at doing is having our April limb pickup or limb drop off out at the public works site area. And then at that same point, having the bins available for pickup. Kim Mitchell is the staff that is working with the county. They have some very specific metrics that they want them delivered to or to go to. It's not just first come, first served. So she's working with them and then get that communicated. But our goal is if they are here and available for pickup at that time, it might be the time while people have a trailer out while they're dropping things off.
That's great. And the sooner we can communicate that, the better. But it's very exciting.
Do we happen to know how many will be available?
I don't know.
I have that in a I do have that in a report, but I don't know about them.
A good amount though.
Okay.
Anybody who wants.
No,
No. Okay. Yeah.
there's metrics, like people that live in subdivisions with garages that keep their trash coming in overnight will not be priorities. It will be people who live in Old Town that don't have places, and most accessible to bears. There's, they're working on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a legal report tonight? Attorney Newman?
No real update tonight. I think I'm gonna save most of my commentary for our executive session tonight. Other than there's nothing really to report, and the Honeywell case, and I think Benita Yoder, we gave her extension on our permit, but Aaron really has more knowledge about that than I do. So those are the only two things.
All right, thank you. Could we please have a summary of action items?
Yes, I've got ordinance 1142 is moved to second reading. The board's consensus was to promote the Boulder County Co-op. Mayor Rogan would like to research implications on changing addresses, and the board would like to see a draft of the process for them to review. Tea with trustees is scheduled for March 26th with Mayor Rogan and Trustee Williams. The time is to be determined. The board would like a potential tour of Summit Housing when available. And there was a request to ask how many bear-proof bins are available.
I do have
What do you have?
From the workshop, we need to forward the Tierra Resources PowerPoint presentation to the Board of Trustees. Work with the sheriff on producing protocols for the community to understand what we can expect. I made one for myself. Who were McCall and Bloomfield? I need to go. And the EP fund stream of what's the process.
Yeah, and I've already sent. Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to say too that we're going to be meeting with principal at the middle school, high school about the incident. So I will also inform him about student advisory committee and if he has ideas for it.
And the other thing I had was the corrections to the ordinance that was passed the second reading today, and I've already sent those to Dolores, so that's already done.
Very much. Okay, so before I ask for a motion to go into executive session, I just want to explain what that is. And executive session is when the board meets with legal counsel, so we have to ask the meeting is effectively over and those online Want to say goodnight to you too, unless you're in the session with us. And then, so Clerk Vasquez, could you please send me over the language? And I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So before we move to executive session, I just wanted to revisit the zero emission equipment grant, which seems. Yes, that was an agenda.
It's not on the agenda.
It's on this electronic version.
It was on in my admin report. We try to make you aware when we're applying for grants. And this is one that is kind of a short time frame. But we have the ability to apply for 2 pieces of equipment for our parks department. That would be electric versus gas. And it's I can't remember, it's pretty much funded through it, but I put the whole spreadsheet in. He just wanted to make you aware that he had submitted that. And Park and Rec recommended it as well. With no match, there's not a big need to put it on the agenda for solar.
Can I ask you a question about that? Sure. Because I saw that the town of Lions had to come up with $11,569.
That could be correct, I think, but I think we've sent it in for the.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure there's going to be a budget issue.
I think that's.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you. I was having trouble pulling my tongue. That was.
Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS section 24-6-402-4A and 24-6-402 for the purpose of determining position for such matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to the potential lease agreement with Lions Emergency Assistance Fund for the use of town of Lions property located at 432 Fifth Avenue.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay. Thank you.
And that passes unanimously.
And while